Welcome back for part two of strategies for sensory processing. We want to do a quick review of what we learned last week for those of you who may not have been here. Just kind of want to go over some of the things that were there. Let's start with understanding why sensory issues is so important to us. Our sensory systems should keep us calm, and they should keep us calm enough for us to listen and attend to, but not so calm that we are lethargic. We also do not want our kids to be so alert that they are bouncing off the walls. Some children need more input to regulate themselves, and others need less. We call these people seekers or avoiders, or seeking and avoiding. Sensory processing issues are not caused by lack of discipline or because the child is bad, but because the child is more sensitive than others to what they hear, see, smell, taste, touch, or feel. If we put strategies in place to help our children, they can thrive. Right there in front of you, the QR code is a sensory processing fact sheet. It's just something that you could review to see what we're talking about when it comes to those sensory processing deficits that some of our students may have. And it's very helpful. It's a very nice resource for you. Um, so on, we did a quick review of the input from the mall. We did a little interactive thing with the video, and it was for a child that is hypersensitive to the sensory input that's in place, like the mall or a restaurant or grocery store that can be torture for some of our kids. And we also have to think about how we as adults have learned how to ignore certain sounds. Sometimes those smells and those cleaning solutions can be overbearing to those children that have sensory processing deficits. So the sounds of heels clicking on the floor, possibly alarms, people talking, those could be very detrimental to some of our students. Lights flickering too much, movement, all of those things. It can be enough to cause a crisis. So remember, the one thing that we talked about was proprioception. That's one of our first senses that we talked about was proprioception, and it's our body's place in space. It helps us to stay balanced and understand where our body is in relation to other objects that are around us. These are some of the activities that we can do when it comes to our proprioception. Weight bearing activities, have this child crawl or do push-ups, resistant activities by pushing and pulling, lifting heavy books or something that's heavy, cardiovascular activities, the running, the jumping on a trampoline, going up and down steps, and sometimes oral activities such as chewing and blowing bubbles can help. These are some of the things that we feel that you can do at home with our students. Crawling through a tunnel, the wall push-ups are something that they really like to do. Um, putting books on the shelves, blowing bubbles, have them help you outside. When it's time for spring, let them help you garden outside with the wheelbarrow and using those tools that are helping you lift some of the heavy objects. Go for a walk wearing the weighted vest. So our next sensory processing issue that we talked about was tactile. And tactile is our touch sensations. Things like tags and clothing or certain fabrics can be difficult to manage if you are sensitive in this area. These are our avoiders. They tend to avoid certain textures of clothing. When we talk about those tags, some people have to wear those tagless T-shirts. I think Hanes was the very first people to come out with them, or either Fruit of the Looms, where they just put their name in the shirt versus having a tag there. Some of our people are extremely ticklish that are avoiders. They are picky eaters. They dislike their hair being brushed or washed and may walk on their tippy toes and refuse to walk barefoot. Those people that are seekers when it comes to tactile, they like to touch a lot of things. So they like the dirty and messy stuff. Um, Not aware of being touched by others. They're not very sensitive to touch. They have a very high pain tolerance. They have low impulse control. They need they prefer their clothing to be tight. They want things to touch them. Um, they may crave strong flavors. These are the people that like strong flavors, heavy flavors that kind of linger. And they put things in their mouth. So they mouth a lot of objects. Some of the strategies that you could use is learning to play with their hands on manipulatives. Try to incorporate a lot of texture, such as Velcro and puffy paint, sometimes sandpaper and that shaving cream. Just giving them that activity to use with their hands, anything that they can use with their hands, and never force it. If you see a child that's very resistant to it, never force it. Let them take a chance on their own. When we're at home, use more blankets. Our next, yes, use more blankets at night. They sell weighted blankets. I actually bought one. It may help them sleep better at night. They may like that deep pressure. Help them set boundaries with other people. Let them tell people that they may not like that touch. That touch doesn't feel good to them, that they're not accepting of a whole lot of touchy feely things. If they are sensitive to touch, they avoid hugs. So, fist bump, maybe just, that's probably the best way for them. Now, our next system that we discussed was our olfactory system, and it takes in smells from all around us. Some of us, like myself, can be seekers and enjoy strong room sprays. I do. I mean, I'm a Bath and Body Works freak. I go in there, I buy plug-ins. I'm constantly buying the aromatherapy products, while others get headaches from these scents. So we have to be very cognizant of our child when it comes to that. So what can we do? Those that do the stronger smells, start with the lemon and peppermint scents. They're typically associated with more alert behavior, and they are. Um, those softer smells like lavender and rose, they calm you down. They usually we consider lavender one of those things that help activate sleep senses. Make your own scratch and sniff stickers. The tea bag matching game, those lotions, and the Kool-Aid Play-Doh. So Dr. Call actually provided us with a recipe on making the dough for it's a scented dough for those that are seekers. So you can use this recipe and just get a Kool-Aid packet of your choice and have them smell those different scents, distinguish between those different scents. The next system that we talked about was our auditory system, and it helps us listen to our surroundings, but also have the ability to filter out those distractions. And when I think of that, I think of myself and Dr. Call. We are those people. Um, we don't prefer loud music, but we are not avoiders. We probably are seekers. Um, when it comes to those that are avoiders, they cover their ears or hide in social situations. They avoid everyday noises such as toilet flushing. They're bothered by these high pitched noises, the whistles, chalks, violins. But those seekers, they prefer loud music, puts musical instruments right next to their ears, makes loud noises in quiet settings. They enjoy loud noises. Craves common noises, air conditioners, those fans. It doesn't bother them. and they seem calmed by noises or music. So, what can we do for those that are avoiders? Try to control the noise level. Many of our kids that have issues like that, if you ever see them covering their ears, they make these little headphones that you can put on to kind of muffle the noises, muffle the sounds, closing windows and doors to reduce distracting noises, and using visual aids. Challenge their senses of hearing. Um, and always provide explicit instructions and give examples of what it is that you want them to do when it comes to those noises of bothering them. So try listening games. Go Fish, Simon Says, Red Light, Green Light. Those things are common games that we play with our kids on a regular basis, and it requires them to do a lot of listening. We did that guess the sound. So at home, you can keep ear protection close by, like the headphones or the earbuds. When kids are sensitive to noise, the adults in their lives should work together to address those safety concerns. So we have to make sure that we're cognizant of what's going on with our child. Sound sensitivity makes it hard to filter out unimportant sounds. So help them learn how to set those boundaries for themselves and for others. If the noise is too loud or the video games become a concern, help them to articulate in a healthy way how to say that's too loud versus throwing the game to the side or just going up being kind of rude and just turning it off. So we're going to begin now where we left off with gustatory. And our gustatory system is our system that allows for our sense of taste. It helps us to recognize the five basic senses, which is sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and savory. Those that are avoiders to our gustatory system, they avoid certain textures of food. They have difficulty with new foods. Sometimes they will gag, choke, or drool. They have difficulty using straws, problem chewing and swallowing, and avoids mushy foods. That goes back to that texture of food. Some people just don't like the way maybe an avocado feels because it's so soft versus someone who likes oatmeal that's kind of grainy. Um, those seekers, they crave certain types of food. They prefer spicy or hot food. They may bite or chew their nails. They mouth non-food items, and they may chew on things like the furniture, toys, pencils, all those things that's easily accessible to their mouth. So what can we do? Let's start by experimenting with the temperature, like comparing ice cubes and frozen fruits to water and our room temperature fruit. So you want to kind of get them to the point where they're testing different objects, experimenting with those different textures like chewy and crunchy. Sometimes try with the nuts and the gum. When it comes to sucking and blowing activities, we want to do the blowing of the bubbles, maybe blowing bubbles with the chewing gum. Sucking and blowing paint or colored water from a straw helps them to learn how to use the straw. And using musical instruments such as the recorder or a flute, blowing paper footballs or feathers. That's something that we've done when we were kids. We used to do that. Okay. At home, help them to understand that taste and smell are closely connected. If your child is sensitive to the smell of a food, it can impact their willingness to taste it. It's so funny because my daughter, every time she gets ready to eat something, she smells her food first. And if it's not appetizing to her, she won't eat it at all. She'll just push it to the side. And she's 25 years old. Um, have kids just taste the food by licking it, then move up to the having to sit it on their tongue for like 10 seconds. Don't rush it. Never force them to do something they don't like, especially when it's touching and tasting. Um, think about the texture of foods as well. They may like apples, but they hate the texture of applesauce. And applesauce is grainy, whereas the apple is solid. So you have to think about how that plays out for that student, for that child. Remember, the goal of sensory integration is to challenge the child in a fun and playful way so they can learn to respond appropriately and increase functioning. When you force them to touch that item that they're uncomfortable with, such as that food, it's not pleasing and can only make things worse. They'll never want to try it again. We want to make sure that we are slowly exposing them to those things that they have difficulty with. Our next sense is visual. And when it comes to the visual sensory processing, the student tends to have difficulties regulating their visual input. It's not that they're blind, it's just difficulty regulating their visual input and result in sensitivity to light and moving images, or a student may seek out increased amounts of visual input. Sometimes the child may miss objects in completing backgrounds or find it difficult to name or match colors, shapes, and sizes. So it's all about what they see and don't see. Um, they may be hyper-responsive to visual input and may seek out increased amounts of visual stimulation to alert their brain. So for that, it means for our avoiders, sometimes they'll cover their eyes or squint or screen out sights. They avoid those bright lights. Sometimes you'll see them just covered, like I said, they'll cover their eyes. They'll put their hands over their eyes just to block out some of the sunlight. They don't like participating in anything that requires a whole lot of group movement because they can't see all those things around them. All that peripheral vision things are happening. Scared of moving objects. They avoid direct eye contact. They have frequent headaches. Sometimes they get dizzy or nauseous when they're using their sight. Unable to determine distance. And they may seem clumsy because they're unaware of the objects in their path. Those that are seekers, they stare at bright lights. They don't mind the flickering, and they'll look directly in the sunlight, and they don't mind those little spots that come up in their eyes after you've done that. Stares at moving objects, moves and shakes their heads during writing or fine motor activity. So if they're writing and they're shaking their head, they're just trying to make sure that it's steady for them. Seems unaware of any new people or objects in the environment. They're kind of not really paying attention to that. They're very unaware of that. Frequently loses their place on a page. These are the ones that are constantly, if they look up and they go back down, they can't find their place from where they were reading. And they seek visual stimulation such as spinning, patterns, fans. You'll notice that when they're little, they love to spin around a lot. So what can we do with those kids? Um, we want to make sure that we develop that ability to learn how to coordinate their visual input with their motor skills. Um, we have activities that will increase their eye-hand coordination, such as stringing beads together and lacing and fine motor skill activities. You'll notice that I Spy bottle down at the center, this is very helpful it's a bunch of rice. It's something very cheap and simple that you could do at home as well. And just put some objects in there with the rice. So they can turn it around and tell you all of the objects that are in there. Visual scanning and visual spatial relation is critical when it comes to their handwriting. doing puzzles, word searches, and mazes. When we talk about that visual discrimination, they're able to determine the differences in color, sometimes the form, shape, and the size of whatever that object may be. At home, modify your lighting so bright lights are not so overwhelming. Use colored bulbs to make the lighting softer. Let them use sunglasses if the glare inside or outside is uncomfortable for them. If they need more or input, use color systems to organize homework and toys. Use a night light or a lamp to help with sleeping. And tone things down. Too much clutter can be overwhelming for someone who has a visual processing disorder. Um, Too much clutter can be overwhelming and it may be hard for them to concentrate. Keep spaces tidy for them and avoid posters and knickknacks because they can't see those little things. They're just not paying attention to them. Do not force kids to make eye contact. That's probably the hardest thing for people to understand. Don't force them to make eye contact. Let them concentrate on what you are saying instead. They're listening to you even if they're not looking directly in your eyes. And ask them to repeat back what you're saying to make sure that they are listening. Our next system is our vestibular. And the vestibular system detects movement and gravitational pull. It provides you with information regarding the position of your head in space and acceleration and deceleration of movement. It tells you where you are up from your head space. The vestibular system has strong neurological connections with the brain and is a major organizer of varied sensory input. You'll notice the picture card words over here, and it tells you go upside down. Just little things like this could help you. It's just a little activity that you can do to help them with their vestibular processing issues. Those who are avoiders are scared of movement activities, fearful around playground equipment. You'll never see them get on a slide or climb a ladder, get on the monkey bars, anything like that. They're fearful of elevators and escalators. Um, they dislike being turned upside down or picked up. They're uncoordinated, can appear stubborn, and avoid stairs or holds on tightly with both hands if they have to go up the stairs. Those that are seekers, they're unable to sit still. They need to be constantly moving. They're constantly rocking or spinning. You'll see them fidgeting. These are the people that you'll see shaking their leg when they have to sit for long periods of time. Um, they're level 10 on most movement activities. They're high functioning when it comes to that. They can be very impulsive. They like to run instead of walk, takes unsafe risk both inside and outside, regardless. They'll walk in the house and instead of walking in, they open the door and they just start running. Prefers to be upside down and hangs off furniture. I've noticed that with some kids that they come home and you'll notice they, instead of sitting on the sofa, they have their feet up on the sofa and they're laying flat on the back and just hanging and climbing on everything. So what can we do? Most children develop a strong vestibular sense simply through engaging in everyday play activities that allow for exploration and movement. They have to keep moving. There are many activities that can help promote the development of a healthy vestibular system. So here are some of our favorites. Those that need it, we try to get them on the slides and the swings. The spinning wheels and the trampoline works. Beanbag, balanced beams, and games work for our vestibular sense. Pillow fights and other pillow games. Hopscotch is very fun. That helps balance, and yoga. it keeps them centered. So at home, rocking a rocking chair or a yoga ball, that can help. Help let them sway to the music. Hanging upside down, that's fine if that's what they want to do and it's going to help them with their vestibular deficits. Let's go ahead and do that. Swiveling in a chair will help. Skip, hop, or gallop. Walking on a balance beam, or playing leapfrog or twister. Obstacle courses are fun too. So, are you a seeker or an avoider? Jello. How many of you like Jello? Roller coasters. Yeah, I'm not a big roller coaster fan, and Dr. Call knows that. Um, the next one, oh gosh, a pedicure or a massage. Ice, crunching on ice. Play-Doh. To me, I think it feels sticky. Even though I know it's probably not, but I don't like the way it feels. So I'm not a seeker. A rock concert. Ooh, um, hang gliding. What is that? Parachute. Oh yeah, exactly. No. Massage. Spicy foods. Sour foods. Sour Patch Kids. Yeah, I like sour. I like the Granny Smith apples. Oh my gosh, love them. Perfumes. Fuzzy socks. Backseat drivers. The snow. Trampoline, jumping up and down. Finger painting. Ugh, no. The beach. Some people don't like this sand on their feet, but I love the beach. Mud sliding. Okay. So there's one more thing that we have for you.
Just to kind of recap, the whole point of that last activity, with you thinking about yourself, like, would I seek out this kind of input or would I avoid this kind of input? As adults, we all have um, different things that we would seek or avoid. Some of us like roller coasters, and some of us hate that feeling of being upside down or being jerked around. Some of us love sandy feet, and others would say, absolutely not. I hate that. The texture of something on your hands. We all have preferences, all of us. With sensory processing issues, that those preferences interfere with our ability to learn or to function on a normal level, right? So if we have a child that has some tactile issues that are so severe that they will not wear socks, um, that's significant enough for us to put some strategies in place to address that. If we have a student, I went into a pre-K classroom today, and one child was crying. It was his first day in this new class, and the other child, every time that kid would start crying, he would immediately cover his ears and start screaming. That's not a normal response, right? A normal response would be that you might get a little upset or move away from that child, but a normal response is not to immediately cover your ears and start screaming and crying, like screaming, right? So um, we have to know the difference between something that's just a normal preference, like what we have, and then something that is out of the ordinary that's causing the child to not really be able to function on a normal level. So that was just the whole purpose of that last activity.
Andrea, she says she has a 3.5-year-old on the spectrum and doesn't like to wear socks and shoes. He likes to feel the ground on his feet. Now, Dr. Call is very well versed with dealing with students with autism, so she can kind of give you some strategies on how to help him to wear his shoes and socks.
Actually, that's really not uncommon for kids on the spectrum. It kind of sometimes goes hand in hand. One doesn't depend on the other, but it's not unusual for students on the spectrum to have sensory issues. Um, my advice for the socks and shoes would be to let him wear shoes without socks, or if it's appropriate to go barefoot. He's seeking input from his feet, right? So he may need to have those little rubber rollers. They have like little knobbies on them, and you can, rub them on the bottom the bottom of their feet, or maybe put his feet in rice. Let him stand in a bucket that has rice or sand in it, or macaroni noodles, or something that has different textures, to kind of get him used to feeling different things on his feet. But he probably is always going to have a preference for going barefoot. And that's okay, as long as he knows that when he goes out, he has to be safe, right? So when you go to school, of course, you have to wear shoes. I would just try different ones. I would try the Crocs that have the little knobbies on the bottom. Sometimes kids on the spectrum really like to wear Crocs because they have those little things on the bottom that give them that input on the bottom of their feet. But yeah, not uncommon for that.
Alrighty, well, if there aren't any more questions, we're going to go ahead and end the meeting. Feel free to email Parent Academy, which is parentacademy@duvalschools.org, if you do have any questions. And thank you to both of our facilitators and all of our participants this evening. Thank you so much and have a fantastic night.